Welcome to Model Kit Stuff, where you'll find all of this. Right, we're ready, having fully primed the whole entirety of the hull and the decks. Everything's been primed. We are now ready to start putting some paint down, and that is a lovely feeling, I've got to say. So we're going to start with the boot line, and what we're going to do is we're just going to spray the area where the boot line will be without any masking or anything. Then we can seal it, mask it, and then we can crack on with painting the rest of the hull. So the paint system we're using, just as a reminder, is the Colour Coats paint system, which was formerly the White Ensign Models enamel paint system, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce this. Those of you who speak German will be able to, but I can't. That is the correct colour for the boot line. So it's not the same grey as we're going to use on the steel deck edging that goes around the wooden deck. So we'll have to use a different grey for that, which is the same grey as the camouflage grey, which is helpful. But here at the bow, where we've got a white section, we'll see some contrast, which will be really lovely. We're using Colour Coat thinners to thin it. I'm using also some VMS Slow-Mo extender medium for enamels. They do it for acrylics and enamels, so make sure you get the right one. That just slows the drying time down, which seems like a strange thing to say about enamels, because everyone's got this impression that it's an oil-based paint, so it takes forever to dry. Not really the case, and particularly when you've got air rushing past your needle through an airbrush, you can get tip drying stuff still. So I always like to put a drop of that, drop or two of that in. And then for cleaning our airbrush, we'll be using VMS airbrush cleaners for enamel, but we can also use white spirit as well. And we'll perhaps use white spirit for cleaning up any paint spills or drips and things we get on the outside of the airbrush. Now, airbrush, we are using the Gallery Advanced GH-AD39, which is an absolutely amazing entry-level brush. It's got a 0.5 needle in there, and I've got the larger paint cup on as well. So all ready to go. I have done a tool review on that if you're interested, and then there's a link to their website through there. Also, you should use my discount code ModelKitStuff010 and get 10% off at checkout. So if you're interested in an upgrade of your airbrush or an entry-level airbrush, this is fantastic, beautiful brush. So that's everything we're doing to put the paint down. So we're just going to do it freehand, lay it down and see how we get on. So my start of my process is to mix it. You never shake enamel paints because it gets all over the lid and you make a mess, and then the lid don't go back on properly and your paint dries. All that stuff. Those of you who are my age or older will remember from using Humboldt paints as a kid. So we will stir the paint, decant it into the airbrush, and away we go. Right then, time to mark out our boot line and mask it off so we can do the painting of the lower hull next. And I'm going to be honest with you, I hate this job. It's the one element of ship modelling I really detest doing, because my experience is it's so hard to get it straight and correct and look right. It's when you get to this moment you think, oh, why am I not doing a Japanese ship? Because obviously they don't even have them. I mean, you do have to still have a straight line, but it is a lot easier. So yeah, we're doing the boot line. The boot line, when you take the measurement off the 200 scale drawings in the anatomy of the ship book, is 9mm. When you scale up from the 1/500 drawings that are used for marking out the scuttles in the first place, it comes out at 8.75mm. So I'm happy to go with the 9. Now a lot of people go with 10 at this scale. I'm not going to do that because I'm already a millimetre short, so it's going to look too fat. So I'm going to go with the 9, and as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm measuring a depth, in this instance from the top of the armour belt down, and what we'll do is we'll shove several bits of tape in places along the length of the hull to try and keep it vaguely straight. Then what we'll do is we'll step back and look at it and see where it needs correcting and start straightening it up. So generally I don't put one great big piece of tape across it, although clearly you can. I tend to do it in sections so that I can make corrections if I need to. It's a painstaking task and I really detest doing it, as you've probably guessed, but it needs to be done. It has a boot line, we need to put it on. So with that in mind, I'm going to crack on doing that, and then we'll see where we get to. Oh, now what I must say is, obviously I've not got 9mm wide masking tape, so I'm going to use 5 and overlap. So when we've got the first one down, we're going to have to measure depth, and we'll do exactly the same thing. We'll put some little pin markers to measure depth along it, but it'll be a lot easier by then. But you do have to be careful that you don't get the boot line to narrow. The other way would be to take some 10mm tape and cut it down, but this is going to be quicker and probably sharper and less likely, if you're not cutting the tape, less likely to get bleed underneath, which is another problem that we might have to face, but we will try and resolve. Okay, let's crack on. Right, I have got the tape on for my boot line on both sides, so 9mm deep, so the correct depth, and what I've done is, as you've seen, and then I've stood back and looked at it and does it look straight? And on one side I was pretty much bang on, I'm pleased to say, and on the other side I wasn't, and spent a lot of time adjusting it. The bow is fairly easy to do because you sort of just line them up and bring them to a point, and then trim it and fold it and make sure that the line's straight. So, 20 minutes, half an hour and you're done. The stern is always a pain in the butt, and we're going to tackle this. There's different ways of doing it, and I've tried different methods, and the way we're going to do it today is using Tamiya flexible tape, and I don't use it very often because, quite frankly, it's rubbish unless you're doing a curve. You can't get a straight line for love nor money with this stuff, but it's really, really good for what it's intended to, which is going round corners. I wouldn't say it's the perfect solution, but it's certainly better than trying to use this stuff. So we're going to have a go at doing that, and the way we'll do it is we'll do a joining line at the top and then a joining line at the bottom, and then we'll fill it in. So it is good tape. It is really good tape, but you don't. This might even be the first time you've ever seen me use it, possibly. So I'm going to do it in the same way. You can see already it's impossible to get a straight line with this stuff. So just going to take a small section and hope that that's enough for doing the short distance on the lower edge of the boot line. So there we go. So that's following the natural fall of the line, and you can see how normally you'd end up with this sort of going up as a cross, and then you've got to sort of curve it. And what we're going to try and do is curve this tape round like that, so that it meets the other side as it's supposed to. You can see why I'm saying it's not a perfect product, but it's sort of getting us there, isn't it? What you can do is sort of manipulate it. I don't know if I got my head in the way there, sorry, but what you can do is you can sort of manipulate it, because it's like a sort of plastic material, flexible plastic material. So you can sort of push it around and make it conform to how you want it. There we go. If anyone has a perfect solution, who's practiced, tried and tested, and it always works for doing these bits on the stern, I'd love to know it, because I've tried different methods and I'm never particularly happy with any of them. But that's not bad. That's not bad. That's always the harder line, to be honest, because it's the tighter turn. So just gonna, now we'll do exactly the same process here and marry up with the top line. Like so. Make sure it's perfect, because if you cut corners here, it'll really show when you get your paint down. And then we're gonna curve that round like that. Cut that way too long. We will deal with that in a moment. So what I'm doing then is I'm just gently pressing in the top edge to find the line. This isn't easy to do on camera. I'm just pinching those together. I think we've got it. Right, I'm going to have a look off camera so I can pick it up, and but you get the basic idea, and then we'll fill it in the middle, probably with offcuts from that. So I want to paint the white next, and then we can mask that off. But when we paint the white on the hull, we've also got to paint white on some of these areas here, and some of these need photo etch before we can do that. So my next job is to put some photo etch on the skylights here. We've got a cover to go on there, and we've also got some plastic parts we can put on at this point as well, so that they get painted up at the same time. So one or two little bits to do at this point. So let's have a look at the plastic parts and the photo etch. So after all this time working on the hull, it's probably worth coming back to the instructions and just getting a sense of where we've got to in the last 5 and a bit months since I started the build. So let's just get ourselves to step 1. Now, I resequenced some of these, but most of the steps are actually in the same order. So step 1, we've done that, but we didn't drill out those holes because we want to use the wooden deck overlay as a template for any holes that we need to put in. Step 1 there, done. Step 2 we've done. Step 3 we have done, which is these parts here, the shaft lines, but these parts remain to be done, and they're step 159. So we've done step 3, but not 159 obviously. So that actually gets us to what was step 3, but I'm calling step 4 and step 5. Now, I don't want to do all of this. We're sort of going to hover on these steps while I do some painting. So we've got to do some painting, and some of this comes into that and some of it doesn't. So let's have a look at the anatomy of the ship and get an idea of what we are and what we're not painting. Then we can highlight those on the instructions and make sure we install everything we need to do. So this is the paint scheme we're doing, just as a reminder. March 1943, so obviously she was sunk in December of that year, and this is Operation Paderborn. So we have white at the stern and white at the bow. So to paint that on, no problem, I could do that now, but when you look at the top down view, we have got some white items at both ends here. Now at the stern, these fair leads here that are white, we can't put the fair leads on until the deck overlay's on, so there's nothing we can do about that. They'll have to be sprayed and attached separately. But this item here, we can do, and if we look at the instructions on my step 5, that is B36. Which is that part there, so we can add that part. Now we need to check if there's photo etch, because that's a very simplified part compared to the actual thing, but we don't want to be adding the jack staff yet, and that goes on, and then there should be a lamp that faces down onto the sea, and I don't know whether that's on the jack staff or not, so we just need to cross-reference with the photo etch to make sure there's nothing we're missing on that. But all the rest of my step 5 can be left alone. And then when we look at the bow here, we've got the anchors painted white, but I want to do those separately because of weathering. Again, we've got fair leads, but we can, again, same problem, we can't put them on until the deck overlay's gone on. And then we've got some white in the area of the steel deck here. So that means we've got some items to attach, and when I look at the instructions, basically all of these fittings are grey, so that's nice and easy, and even these here are grey, and I thought they were white. I had it in my head they were white, so I don't need to do the photo etch for that. So we've got X62 that we can attach, and then the photo etch that goes on there, which we've already removed and is been put to one side. So that's also in this area here that is white, and you can see it looks quite different now. We've remodeled it. So a lot less to put in than I thought. So let's get these parts out and the photo etch, and also we need to check whether there's any more etch to go on. So I think a quick look at the etch instructions next. So the only thing I've found other than the anchor grate at the bow is this here, which is shown in pink, which tells me it's a 3D printed part, and it says C0107. And that's, you know, this is where we start to struggle with instructions. When we look at the 3D printed resin, there is a C0107, so it could be that piece. But on the other one, that's also CO1, and there's an 07 there, which I think are gun barrels. So we're going to have to look at the 3D printed parts. So let's get those out. Try and get in with a sharp knife and cut the little filaments away that are its support, but it's difficult to see what I'm doing. No, I'm gonna break it doing that. Right, okay. Interesting. Trust me to need something that you get in the middle first. Right, I think we're gonna have to cut the individual parts out and work our way towards it. So that is a job for our razor saw. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to cut here because I've got a break that I've created, and see if we can cut the corner out and get to it. See, even that's difficult because of how closely packed the parts are. So I can't even do that, so we are going to change saw. There we go, it's out. Right, we'll need to clean this mat in a sec. This part is tiny, and that's as close as I can get you in. It won't focus after that. So that's the connector there, and then this big rod at the back is also a connector. And it's on the flat face, so we can cut that straight off flat. There we go. Okay, let's talk about what the part we've just removed and why it's wrong. This is what we've just removed. The 3D printed part they've given us has these two legs on it and has this little lamp, minus the wiring of course, and then we have the jack staff coming out, the supports for it coming out above that. As you can see, we've got the eagle on the back, which means that's early. It says early 1939. This is what we should have in 1943. So those legs are actually not straight anymore. It's now curved, and the lamp is mounted on. So I have just removed the lamp because all of this bit here is from the old version, and we don't need any of that, so we can just cut that off. Right, which means we've got to scratch build something, but let's have a look at the kit part. So our kit part doesn't have the arch on that we need, which sort of comes off the flats here where the sprue connectors are. So we're gonna have to make something and then glue on the little light tube. So we've got some scratch building to do before we do anything further. So I'm just going to take these sprue gates off. and then we can have a look, clean up the part and have a look at what the solution is for that. I might have a bit of tube that can do the job, but it's quite a gentle arch actually. Trouble is, card will be flat, so we need to have a think about it. Let's get the part cleaned up. The other two parts I've also removed, so we can clean them up and install them. And when we scratch built the front end, I did leave location holes for them, so fingers crossed they'll just go in okay. So you don't need to see me cleaning up the parts, so I'll clean up the parts and then we'll have a look at what we're doing with this. Right, my part is cleaned up, and actually there was two little plastic parts that came out a little way, which looked like the hinges. So I've removed those because we don't need those, and I'm thinking my solution is to shape some plastic section and sort of, because it's got a bit of flex in it, see if we can make that bow. When you look at the picture on it sort of starts off as thick as that and then get as the part here, and then thins as it gets towards the top. So yeah, gonna have to have a little bit of a play. So we need to stress the part a little bit and put a curve in as a start point. There we go, that gives us our curve. And you can see it's way too thick to start off with, so we've got plenty of scope for shaping. So I'm just going to nip that off with my old sprue cutters, and this is going to be the part we start working with. So let's tape that down so that's not moving, and then we can start having a play. Okay, I have thinned the part down so that it's about the thickness that I think we need for this. So we've now got a slight bend in it, but we're going to make that a bit more acute by filing it thinner. So as we looked at the picture, you could see it was thinner in the middle. So we're going to start that process because I don't want to get the length right until we've got the shape right, because if we get the shape slightly off center, we can correct that when we cut it to length. So that's what we want to do. You can see that because I've stressed the part, it's now a bit bendy, which means that we'll be able to glue it into place a little bit, hopefully. It's certainly a lot softer in this middle section here, and that's only going to get more acute as we take some material out. So I'm just going to gently, with my half round here, just put a shape in. There you go, you can see I'm off centre. I thought I was going to be. That's okay. The curve is actually wider than our file, so that's okay. Sorry, the camera autofocus is... I want to see if we can track. There we go. Should track that better now. You can see now we're starting to get a bit of shape in. I can use the flat to extend that out a bit. And then go back to the curve to put some shape in. Just get rid of all this sort of residue, and you can see clearly where you're up to then. Right, let's just have a look at that. We're not far off. Need to make sure that it's even on both sides. It's easy to go in at an angle. Which I think I have done a little bit, but not too much. So I'm not really pressing on at all. This is really soft plastic material to work with, so works quite nice. Right, I think what we're going to do now is start fitting the part. So I'm going to cut a little chamfer in. Get that out of the bloody way. Right. I find this carving knife, this short blade knife, is really good for this type of work. So get the chamfer deliberately wrong and then we can make it more acute as we need. I prefer to test fit a few times. I think that's about right. I think we can glue that in and then finish the cleanup of it once it's in situ. So this is going to be interesting. So I'm using Plastic Magic and we're just going to paint a bit onto that end first and put that in position, hold it where we want it and hold the other piece where we want it so that it sits exactly where we want it to be while it dries. And whilst I'm holding that, I'm going to put some more glue on this other side and then put that one in position, and we'll just hold it there for a minute. And I can't switch the camera off, so I'll have to edit this bit out. Right, it's glued into place, so let's just take that out. We've managed to get glue under the tape, so we might have some additional cleanup to do, but nothing major yet. So you can see that we've got our basic shape, but we've still got to do some final shaping, quite a bit actually, just to make this work. But that's no problem at all. So what I want to do is just let that dry, because you can see it's quite molten. We put quite a bit of glue in there, so we'll let that dry off, and while that's drying we can fix the two fair lead rollers to the bow. So these are the holes that we put in for the fair leads to go in at the front. They need opening up, they're a bit small, but would you believe when I came to look at the parts that there's actually an ejector pin hole we've got to deal with. So yeah, you can just about see that there. I think I can sand it out, but that will show under paint, and they're on the same side, so you can hide one but not the other. So yeah, okay, another little task we've got. Having lots of fun with this today. We'll just go in with our reamer and open the hole up a little bit. And then we just need to clean up what we've done. Let's test fit now. So I was able to sand the ejector pin marks out, so that was okay. Right. That one fits in nicely. See if we can get the other one in. Yeah, that fits in nicely now, so all we have to do is add some glue. Try and get this lot out of the background. I might have to change my my mat so that this thing focuses properly. I do find the autofocus on here is not as intelligent as perhaps it could be. Well, that's our fair leads in, so that's great. Right, hopefully the glue has dried now on our stern roller fair lead and wake light, and that we can finish shaping that and install that as well. But whilst we've got the camera here, let's have a look at that bit of photo etch for the grating. So I've put some thin CA on the inside lip of our little photo etch grill, which will just tack it into place hopefully. Now we've got it positioned, and we did a reasonably good job of positioning that right first time, I can go in with a bit more glue. The great thing about this thin CA is it doesn't leave any witness really. So I think that should be okay, but I tend to be a bit belt and braces, so there we go. I'm just going to give it a gentle nudge and see if it stays in place. Nope. It's perhaps not as gentle as I intended anyway, but what we don't want is it suddenly blowing off when we're airbrushing. Right, fairly sure now that that should stay where it is. Right, happy with that. That's our grilling. So that little section there is white. We've already sprayed it with a dark grey underneath. So when we come in, you should get a bit of white goes in, and then it'll fade out, which will make it dark on the inside of the hose pipe, which should be great. And then of course we can do a little bit of weathering, bit of rust and stuff on there as well. So okay, the remaining holes are for the jack staff. We're not doing that till much later on. So that's the bow bits done ahead of white painting. So let's have a look at the stern again. Okay, so if we look at just that half, that's already starting to look better. So what we've got to do now is correct the shape on this inside here. Okay, so I think to correct the shape we've got to tackle it from the underneath and also from the top, but just to make sure that we're nice and even, I want to just move this a little bit because I don't think it's quite in the right position. So you can see I've just broken it away so that I can manipulate it a bit. There we go. That's a better shape now, I think. So just squeezing that together, and we'll put a little bit of glue in. Obviously you can't use CA for jobs like this because it's too brittle. It will break under the stress of you manipulating it. So I'm just going to hold that into place like that and let that dry. So now we can do some real shaping work, and we need to thin it out at the top, we need to thin it out at the centre, and we need to not change anything on the kit part, so it's a little tricky. Just time and patience, and just keep checking what you've done. But that's definitely starting to look a bit more like it. Okay, I think that's getting there now. Definitely nearly there. Right, I think we're okay on the front face there. Well, the only thing we've got to do now is sort out the top down view where it's still looking a bit lumpy and bumpy. So I'm just going to file that into shape. The outside curve is the easiest to do, obviously. And what we're going to do is scrape the inside curve. There's a bit of flex in the plastic which doesn't help. I think we can probably take a bit of material off there quickly. Okay, I think I am happy with that. So all I need to do now is glue this on, and then we'll glue the wake light on above it, and then there is another light to go on that's not included in the kit or the upgrade set, but I might put that on later in the build because it'll be very delicate. So we'll basically be putting a thin piece of wire up from the back, which will stand about 5mm high, and then it has a little square lamp on it, like a tail lamp. So yeah, but I'm happy we've got something that looks now like it should. So let's get this attached onto the stern, and then we can do some painting. We have carefully, very carefully positioned that because there's no location pin or anything for this. It just sits there. So it's taken a little bit of time to get it central, and We've taken a little bit of the primer off to help with the bonding process, but it seems to be fitting quite nicely. So we'll just let capillary action do its thing. That should be alright, but again, belt and braces will put a little bit underneath. And you want this part to just sit fractionally over the edge of the deck so that you're forming a very, very, very small lip. So we'll just leave that alone and let that dry now. So now we can finally fit our wake light. So what we're going to do is put a small amount of thin CA right on the middle part there. And then we can take our lamp, which I've got stuck to a bit of masking tape so I don't lose it. And this points down at the ocean because, well, it's a wake light. There we go. Now that looks straight to me. Yeah. Okay. And now we've got it in place, we can put a little bit more glue around it just to make sure it's properly bonded. There we go. Right, so like I say, the actual stern lamp we will put on at a later stage when we've finished painting the hull and we're not tipping her upside down anymore. So yeah, quite satisfying when you've done a bit of scratch building and you've ended up with something that looks better than what would have been if you'd just done what the kit, or in this case the kit and the aftermarket would have had you do. So with all that done, we can now move on to masking for the paint. So that's my next job. So I need to revisit where the markings are. Okay, so having a look at our paint instructions here, and we can see we want to paint this white section in. So we can see that what we actually need is going in from third in from the end in terms of scuttles, and that goes in a straight line, sort of diagonally. So if I put that on there, and then it should go, that's right, it just touches the edge of that scuttle there. There we go, I think that is right. So I've not prepared myself. Where's my scissors? So we can terminate on that on the masking for the boot line, and then I'm just going to gently take that off so that it's fitting around the degaussing cable nicely. Carry that line on up to there. There we go. So that's our first white section in. And then what we can do is do the other side in the same way, and I'll do the front. It's easier for me to do this off camera, and then I'll come back to you when we're about to paint. Okay, ready to go on painting our white. I'm using Colourcoat's CO3 matte white for this, keeping it with the same paint system we've used. As you can see, this pot has never been used before, as I actually have to get all the plastic off it. They wrap them in plastic just to make sure that the lid doesn't come off, I think. There we go. So I'm going to get this mixed up, thinned with the colour coat thinners, and we'll put a bit of slow-mo extender in, which is a VMS product which I really like, and that'll just help with a reduced tip dry. And in terms of airbrush, I'm going to be using my Mobius 0.3 needle for this. We're going to have to build up some layers with it being white, so I don't want it too even, but I don't want it cloudy either. So I think this will do the job nicely. So let's get the paint mixed up and then off we go. Just going to get the dust off first. Looks like we're pretty clean actually. So we put the white paint down now, gosh, about 7-8 hours ago. And I'm always cautious with enamel paints, because like any other paints, they dry on the surface first and then they set slower underneath, and enamels can dry just that little bit slower. So whilst it's touch dry and you're okay to handle it, masking tape could possibly rip it off, and I don't want to risk that. So what I've done to allow me to crack on with painting the lower part of the hull, which is the next job, is we've put some cling film, you might know it as saran wrap or plastic wrap, around, and actually what we've done is we've taped it to the existing tape over the boot line, and onto the plastic wrap, so it's not in contact with the white paint at all. And it's a really cheap and efficient way of masking. I do it quite a bit. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know that I use this quite a bit. So all we've done is protect the white paint that we've put down from what we're about to do, which is to put the red down. So we're using Schiff's Boden Farb 3 Rock 5 for this. This is a tin that I've used before, but it's about 3/4 full. I have another couple of tins of this. You do have to be a little bit careful because different batches, different shades, but we want a little bit of shade undulation on this, so we'll be doing it a little bit patchy. We've already done some pre-shading around 1 or 2 areas, and then what we'll do once we've got it down is we'll try and make it a bit cloudy, because when you look at ships' hulls, they wear unevenly, and there might be areas where they wear more heavily, like at the front where you've got water rushing by all the time and it sort of wears the paint down, whereas the water turbulence is less pressured in different areas, so the flat bottom of the hull might get less turbulence than the front, and so that wears a bit less. But again, the paint thickness, as the water sort of takes the layers of paint down and wears it down, the unevenness in the thickness of the paint going on starts to show, and you get all this sort of unevenness. So we don't need to worry, because we're not doing a museum standard perfect hull, we don't need to worry about an even paint job, although that's actually easier to do. So we're just going to see how it goes. We've got all sorts of different tricks we can pull out of the bag if we need to. We can put yellows in and mix colours into the red to change hues if we need to, but I want to see if I can just do it using the just different thicknesses of the paint on the hull, because that's going to be my simplest and quickest option. So what are we using in the way of equipment to get this job done? Well, I'm using my Swallowtail from Gallery, which is a trigger gun, and it's got a 0.7 needle in this, and you can see we've got the extra large paint cup on. I'm actually limited to mixing paint in my pallets, so we'll probably put 3 or 4 pallets worth into here before we actually start painting. 0.7 needle is going to put a fair amount of paint down at a decent rate, but I've not used the 0.7 needle before, so I'm not fully sure how this is going to work out. I have used the Swallowtail before, and it's a lovely brush. The only downside is it doesn't fit into my cleaning pot, and it doesn't fit into my airbrush racks. So I've had to improvise a stand using a combination of the paint pot and a clamp handle upside down. So you can see there, and it just about rests nicely, but I'm a little worried, and if I get paint on our new floor, it's on the hands and knees with the White Spirit very quickly, because Paula will not be happy, and that's a place I don't want to be. So in terms of thinning the paint, I'm using colour coat thinners. I could use White Spirit. I've got some VMS Slow-Mo extender medium, which is for enamels. They do it for acrylics, so get the right one. And then I do use the VMS airbrush cleaners as well, but White Spirits is just as good. What I like to do is just put a final flush through of this, and I find it's a really good product. Whether it's better than White Spirits and I'd rush out to buy it again, I don't know, but it is a fairly good product. Right, so next job is mixing paint. So let's get the lid off this. So as always, we stir, we don't shake. I need to get a pallet, and then we can start loading the gun up and get on with this. Well, I have to say that was a lot of fun, and I never used to say that about airbrushing. But yeah, that took me about half an hour and would have taken me a lot less, but I mixed paints 3 times during the course of laying this down. Each time doing about, I guess, a third of the paint cup. Now, of course, the height on the paint cup allows you to get in at angles and tilt the paint without it spilling out. So that's another reason for putting the biggest one on, although I do have a bigger one. The Swallowtail has absolutely behaved impeccably. No issues at all. Really nice atomization, and yeah, I got this done in record time. So yeah, a really beautiful instrument that's done a really nice job, and the 0.7 needle is a real boon. So yeah, enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the trigger airbrush. So yeah,
definitely one that I'll be using more and more for all sorts of jobs. And I was surprised at how much precision you get with this when I played around with it on something earlier. But yeah, we now have that down. It's already looking touch dry. Yeah, it is. I've spent the last 15 minutes or so cleaning my brush and cleaning stuff up, because I won't be using this for a little while, so it's had a full strip down, that being this end and the needle and what have you. So yeah, all good, very happy with it. I think paint finish is perhaps a bit too even, but that's down to me, not the airbrush or the paint. So and this was white ensign paint actually, so I've had this quite some time, and that behaved impeccably as well. So yeah, beautiful finish, one that's colour accurate, and a great airbrush session. Just a load of fun. Right, it is Sunday night, about 9:30 at night. I'm going to leave this overnight to dry now. And then the only thing we've got left to do on this hull is get the dark grey down. And then we can think about some of the detail painting, the anodes and the sonar and stuff. Right, let's crack on. Please consider the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you don't miss any content that I put out. Model Kit Stuff is a self-funded channel, and I don't do membership or Patreon or buy me a coffee. So if you'd like to further donate to the channel and ensure the cameras keep rolling and the content keeps coming, then you can consider making a donation through my PayPal. You will find a link to that in the text below. You enjoy your modelling, and I'll see you soon.